My name is Caleb. Thanks so much for joining me for this video. So this one is going to be about the Zhiyun Molus G300. In particular, what made me want to make a video about this light is because I was interested in it, but there was one question in particular that I had and no one seemed to be answering. Um, and it was, what happens in the 500 watt mode? Like, do you lose control of all the other settings, or what really goes on, right? So, okay, let's go through some pros, some cons, and then we'll come to the answer to that question. So, pros, the light tiny, the light small, right? I personally, I'm not a fan of the like pack and head um design, but that's actually the design for high-end professional strobes, as far as I know, where you have like a big, heavy battery pack, and then you could run like 2+ heads from it. So it's actually a great design and smart because it allowed them to make the light really small, which makes it very flexible. I'm sure it's somebody who's just ecstatic that the head is so tiny because now they can put a light like in some tiny crevice and light a whole room or something. But um, I'm doesn't matter for me. I prefer to have something that's brighter, even if it's bigger and cheaper, as opposed to necessarily something that's tiny and maybe a little bit more flexible. But that's a preference thing. For its size, its weight, the price point, I think you'd be hard pressed to find something with this combination of features that is this bright, um, and then bicolor as well. P.S. I think a bicolor light is probably your first lighting investment if you're a videographer, because it just gives you so much flexibility for any kind of work you might want to do. So if this is going to be your first light, or you're on the market for your first light, bicolor for sure. You could always get a daylight balance light afterward. Actually made a mistake and bought a daylight balance light when I really wanted a bicolor light. So now I have a bicolor one and a daylight one. Story for another day, maybe the comparison video. Um, so yeah, and then the build quality. Build quality is excellent. Everything feels premium. Everything feels solid. Like you're not gonna be worried it's gonna fall apart or something's gonna break. Um, on the note of build quality, just as much as I enjoy it, there's one part in particular, the yoke, right? It goes from being really easy to tighten, and like you don't have to worry about it slowly changing angle or loosening or anything. But just as easy as it is to tighten, it's easy to loosen. So if you are not aware, or you forget, or maybe somebody else is adjusting the light, it could be a huge problem because it will literally go from boom, right? It just goes limp basically. Um, and then I personally am not a fan of the pack and head design for this light. I don't know exactly what it is. It just felt like touching too many things. I didn't like my interaction with it, if that makes any sense. So the fact that the like wire is like unique, and it's also attached to the power supply, that means if you get a short, you would have to replace the whole power supply slash control unit. That is a con, kind of. I think for a wire this gauge, you'd have to be trying to destroy it to short this out. So it's unlikely will happen. Another one, the light is kind of long. So if it matters to you, it really doesn't matter to me, to be honest. I think with the noise reduction and voice isolation, all of that in DaVinci Resolve and other video editors, noise really don't matter these days. But if fan noise bugs you, the fan noise might be an issue when you're in maximum. And speaking of maximum, so that question that I had, right? What happens when you put it in maximum? Well, um, I was worried that you would go from 300 watts to 500 watts and then there's no in between. Thankfully, there is the in between. You have full control of the Kelvin as well as the intensity, even in the 500 watt mode. So instead of it just going from 0 to 300 watts and then skipping everything in between 300 watts and 500 watts, and that's your only option, you also have access to all the power between the two levels, meaning the light is fully versatile. And you have access to all the Kelvins throughout that power band too. Okay, so with the G300, you could also switch off the light by pressing the dim button, or the dim dial. But the issue with that one is, so I think it's supposed to be a standby mode, but it won't memorize your light intensity. It'll memorize your Kelvin, your light intensity. Whereas if you completely switch it off, it's memorizing both the light intensity and the Kelvin. So what that looks like is, let's say you are at 4300 Kelvin and 50% light intensity. If you press the dim button, it's going to remember the 4300, but not the 50%. But then if you switch it off, it'll remember both. But then if you switch it off, it'll remember both. So it's kind of like, what's the point of having this additional standby mode, right? And then if you press the Kelvin dial, it will actually cycle through the color temperatures, but like some presets. So I think it's like 3200, 4600, 5600, and something else, right? So that could be a quick way you could cycle through the Kelvin. Now, lastly, I wanted to see if this light could double as a photography light because it's a bit of an investment. And why not kill two birds with one stone if you can, right? The bicolor light, it's pretty bright, right? It's small, so it's easy to carry around and stuff. So, long story short, I put it in electronic shutter because if there's any way to create banding in modern cameras, is to put it in electronic shutter. And I put it at 1/8000 of a second shutter speed, and then I proceeded to take pictures through the entire Kelvin. And this light had no problem with that, zero banding for all the photos. So you could definitely use it as a photography light. The only thing is, if you're going to be doing like product photography, certain types of um, portrait photography, basically anything where you need to stop down and maybe also increase your shutter speed, you're going to realize that you're going to run out of light quick. At that point, if that's the type of work you're doing, you probably need to get a strobe. So yeah, so that's my quick look at the Zhiyun Molus G300. I hope it was helpful for someone. Stick around for the next video where I'm going to cover which lights I actually got, um, talk a little bit about the cost, why I got them, show you some of the features, and yeah. So thanks once again for staying with me throughout this video. See you in the next one.